I'll start that right now. Okay, I think we're starting. Welcome to the session. It's probably, as you can tell, the seventh time that I've been able to participate in this. I'm feeling a little bit intimidated because I usually have at least one or two partners to help me. And my voice is kind of going, so we're going to do the best we can to talk about as many books as we can all by myself. So I apologize for you just getting me. And a lot of the fun things we usually integrate won't be happening this time just because of this virtual um, situation. But if you need to contact me, there's my contact information. Are you seeing what I hope you're seeing? Just the screen. I know you can adjust however you want in terms of Zoom participants, but is my screen share okay for you?
Looks great.
Okay. All right. So I usually read a story. We're going to let YouTube read it to us because of my voice and being the Lone Ranger again today.
If you can't bear a hug, air hug. A book inspired by social distancing by Katie Sedgwick. If you can't bear a hug, air hug. Smiling snap, fuzzy bellies out. We stretch our arms out wide. If you can't flap fins, flash grins. Eyes twinkling, cheeks dimpling. We show off our enormous teeth. If you can't hump knuckles, trade chuckles. Quiet giggling, seashells wiggling. We share jokes late at night. If you can't tickle feathers, sing together. Talons tapping, wings flapping. We whoo 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 in rhythm. If you can't split a fish, share a wish. Fluffy heads on floating beds, we spot a shooting star. If you can't share snores, share roars. Chests puffed, manes fluffed, we see who growls the loudest. If you can't touch noses, give roses. Trunks twisting, tails swishing, we pick a perfect plume. If you can't rub whiskers, be good listeners. Heads hurt, ears alert, we have a hunt to hunt. If you can't give pecks, rain check. Chirping our songs, we say so long and wave our wings till then. If you can't share bamboo, share a view. Sleepy eyes on colorful skies, we watch the sun go down.
Kind of a fun little intro to what I hope we're going to be talking about. It's kind of the elephant in the room, dealing with COVID. And again, this session to me, having bibliotherapy as a way to connect with children is really important, probably more important than ever. So I kind of would say to you, if books aren't the cure, they're the next best thing. And occasionally we'll throw in a meme. Government officials, it's really hard for kids to get COVID-19, so all the schools will be fine. And I'm assuming that you saw plenty of teacher looks, probably your own looks, when school just started up this fall. One of my pet peeves is the idea that in the beginning, let me see, I'm having trouble with my making sure that you're seeing what you need to see, but making sure I can get to what I need to in terms of not being able to hold the books up. If I hold up the books, I got to show you how this works. Um, with my background, when I hold up a book, it just kind of disappears, just like my chair does. So we're going to be doing this a lot different than I've been able to do in the past. So please bear with me. In the meantime, I felt like they mislabeled it right from the start. Social distancing, no, that's not exactly what we want. Physical distancing, yes, that's okay. That's important, especially with young children. Those relationships are really powerful and really important. And if we don't maintain them through something as important as a pandemic, we've kind of missed the mark as the adults in the room, that idea. So the first book that I want to talk to you about is called Paula and the Pandemic. And it's about a little girl who misses doing her favorite things during this pandemic. And so her mom redirects her into planting a seed and nurturing a seed to give her kind of something to do. And I really like this because for many years, have used the plant a seed like you do in preschool with my adult learners in early childhood classes, because I think there's no better way to read the cues of an individual plant like you would an individual child by nurturing and looking to what their needs might be. One of my favorite things was give them random seeds and they had to kind of guess what it would be as it grew. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. And this brilliant mom happened to do that and help this child with the opportunity to do something constructive, even though the world wasn't necessarily what she expected or what she wanted. The hope is that nurturing that seed will be similar to nurturing people. Basically, this book is intended to help parents keep kids on track with COVID and deal with the issues at hand as they arise. The second book is Lucy's Mask. Lucy's a little girl who's really kind of bored with the beginning quarantine. And so her regular activities weren't taking place. So she starts getting excited when her mom says, I'm going to make you a new mask. She's motivated. She jumps up. She runs to her costume toy box and starts playing all the superheroes that she can think of. And she's not that happy when her mom tells her, this isn't a costume mask. This is the kind that keeps us safe and keeps other people safe. And it takes her a while to realize that she's going to figure out what a real superhero can be, which is her, if she wears her mask. So that's a fun one. And again, this first group deals with the elephant in the room, the pandemic, and the virtual world that we're kind of living in. So the social distance keying is very similar. A lot of children are confused, especially toddlers and preschoolers. If you think about it, they're egocentric. They see everything from their own perspective, and then they're pre-operational. It's another limitation to their thinking. My favorite example is, like many of you, in the beginning of the pandemic, we really did isolate. And I hadn't seen some of my grandkids who live out of town for several weeks. So when Easter rolls around, I decided I'm getting in the car and I'm going to go visit these kids. So my youngest grandson wasn't 2 yet, and we're sitting visiting out on the lawn trying to keep our distance and be as safe as possible. And he plays with the cousins. He's really excited. And then I'm sitting in this lawn chair and he comes around and kind of crawls in the arm of the chair and just sits right next to me. And he's, again, not even 2, so he doesn't really say much, but he basically is communicating to me, what's wrong with you, Grandma? You're usually hugging and kissing me. This is how I sit when we read stories together. Brought tears to my eyes that we had missed that because of this isolation. So the idea is the social distance keying helps to spread ways to flatten the curve without being socially distant and still keeping our friends. So it's a creative, fun story that kind of adds to what we're trying to accomplish in this particular category. The next one's called Why Did the World Stop? And as far as I'm concerned, um, it's, again, they're very, very similar, but when you need variety and helping kids cope, just a change in the illustrations or who's the illustrator might make a huge difference. And again, we're dealing with things that are part of the pandemic. This one is rich in very appropriate vocabulary that would have been new to all of us in the very beginning, but now it's kind of common. But if you get young children, it might be another one to keep on the shelf just in case they have concerns or questions. And again, a way to alleviate anxieties and fears. The last one in this group is I Can Do Hard Things. Most of these books were released this past year. This one's a little bit older, it's 2018. But basically, I thought it belonged in this category because it emphasizes dealing with emotions and problems. It focuses on mindfulness that we talked about quite a bit a few years ago. It emphasizes then affirmations and mantras that kids can, in fact, deal with on a daily basis that might be helpful to them. The one that I pulled was I can choose kindness, I can practice peace, I can share my gifts with the world. So being part of the solution rather than the problem is kind of how I read that one and why I think it can and will make a difference. These memes are kind of a crossover between COVID and library or books. So bear with me. I just picked the ones that I thought were the most fun. And if you can't read that, Albert Einstein said the only absolute that the only thing that you absolutely have to know is the location of the library. So to me, that's pretty powerful and pretty fun to think about. Our next section are oh, wait, you got to see this one. This was the COVID response in Australia. That's the line to get in the library, probably before it closed because they knew that was inevitable. Okay, so our next section is about fun and family. And the first book's one of my favorites for the year. It's called, just one sec, I have to get my notes up so that I can look at you instead of the books. Um, it's kind of a fun spin on kids who don't want to take their naps. And so the idea is, what if other people could take your nap for you? And that's what actually happens to Annalise Devon McFleece. She won't have anything to do with nap time, so her dad takes her on a walk through the park. And it seems like everyone and everything is willing to take a nap for her. It starts out with a man on the bench. It says, if you don't want to take your nap, may I please take it? And so he does. But then it bleeds into the dogs, the dog walkers, everything you would see in the park, all the kids doing their activities, all stop and take a nap and fall asleep. When she finally is ready for her nap, there aren't any left. All the naps have been taken. So a lot of you can relate to this, feeling like you would take someone's nap gladly for them when you're so extra tired. Anyway, where can she find a spare nap? She can't seem to find one, so she screams and cries really loud. No one hears her because they're all asleep. But this cat wakes up and basically says, I've taken a lot of naps. You can have one of mine. So it has a really fun narrative and beautiful illustrations. One of my favorites. It would be on my must-have list. If you are, in fact, I hope you got the message when you logged into Canvas that to download the handout so that you can circle the ones that you want as you go. If not, I think they'll keep that open so you can go back and get that at any time sooner or later. This next one, Nana Akua Goes to School, is beautiful. You can just tell by the illustrations right here that there's a lot that goes into this book. And as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the better new ones about cultural diversity. It happens to be coming up Grandparents' Day at Zura, I think is how you pronounce it. It's her school. And most of the kids are really excited to bring their grandparents to school, but Zura's not quite so sure. One of her friends' grandfather is a fisherman. Another one, his grandmother's a dentist. But she's nervous because her grandma's her favorite person in the world, but her grandma looks different than the other grandparents. Her grandma was raised in Ghana and has tribal markings on her face, and you can barely see one in this cover. The good news is she's worried kids are going to make fun of her because they've kind of done that when they're in public in the past, kind of sneered or looked away or been rude. But Nana herself knows exactly what to do. She brings a quilt with traditional African symbols all over it and a bit of face paint. So they basically learn what the symbols mean and choose what they want to go on their faces. So they kind of integrate into that culture in what I think is a very nice and beautiful way. It also is a nice springboard into other kinds of activities. Inside the cover of the book, a lot of those markings are there with the description in terms of what they need. So it's very rich when in extra content as well. How many of you remember The Farmer and the Monkey? It was in 2014, one of our early presentations. I mean, The Farmer and the Clown. Sorry. This is the sequel, The Farmer and the Monkey. If you look really close, you can see right here, The Farmer and the Clown, where in fact, the clown's hat was left behind. And so Marla Frazee actually connects these books in a very, very beautiful way. So the sequel is again another wordless picture book, but again, a nice addition to any library just because of the difference. We don't see a lot of those right now. So it picks up right where it left off. He leaves the clown to get on the train, comes back to his house and finds out that he left his hat. In the meantime, on his way back to his house, he can tell someone's following, and it turns out the monkey from the circus is on his tail now. At first, he is not impressed with the silly monkey and all of his antics, and then they grow to be friends, just like he did with the clown, and appreciates that company. But eventually it's time again for him to go back to the circus. So he goes to the train and you kind of are left with that. Spoiler alert, however, don't miss the finale. It's due out next April, called The Farmer and the Circus. So it's not going to be going on forever and ever, but I think it's kind of exciting that um, she will at least end that series with one more iteration. Okay, this one is called Fry Bread, and Fry Bread, you can just tell from the cover how beautiful these illustrations are. It's kind of a new twist, if you want to call it that. It won a lot of awards, and it was a Caldecott honoree, so it's kind of a powerful addition at this point. But it's a modern day kind of rendition of the native culture and the tradition of making fry bread. Kind of a different spin on than I'd seen before, and a different recipe than I'd seen before. So that was kind of fun for me. Just a little excerpt on what the author provides. Fry bread is food. It is warm and delicious, piled high on a plate. Fry bread is time. It brings families together for meals and new memories. Fry bread is nation. It is shared by many from coast to coast and beyond. Fry bread is us. It is celebration of old and new, traditional and modern, similarity and difference. Beautiful, beautiful words and put together in a very poignant way. Again, as I said, those illustrations are phenomenal. It would be an awesome addition to any multicultural collection that you might have. It has recipes, but there's also a piece in the back, more like a glossary with an author's note that just expands what fry bread is, just all of the senses. So a lot of enrichment material provided there as well. Beautifully done. All right, the next one, have you noticed they're all my favorites? Sorry about that. It happens to me every time. This one kind of reminded me of Hair Love from last year that was made into a movie. Just a fun, fun way to express, again, a cultural but familial tradition. It's called Bedtime Bonnet, and it's about a little girl who says, in my family, when the sun goes down, our hair goes up. My brother slips a do-rag over his locks. Sister swirls her hair in a wrap around her head. Daddy covers his black waves with a cap. Mama gathers her corkscrew curls in a scarf. I always wear a bonnet over my braids, but tonight I cannot find it anywhere. Um, so she goes around asking everyone, and finally she asks her brother, have you seen my bonnet? He says, ask Grandpa. And yep, Grandpa's hiding behind the newspaper wearing her bonnet as a joke. So I love the portrayal of this multi-generational or intergenerational family that's very functional, portrays a really nice family relationship, and it does a nice job of integrating a ritual, but their variations within their own family on that ritual. So again, a fun read, but kind of enduring as well. The last one on this section is called On Account of the Gum, and you can just by the cover guess what's going on here. It kind of leads you to believe that sometimes the best intentions lead to the worst and funniest outcomes or situations. So how do you get gum out of your hair? Scissors, butter, the cat, or do you call your aunt, or the fire department? So you can imagine the collective buildup in her hair as she tries all the solutions that everybody suggests. The bad news is, in the end, what do? They really do cut out the gum, but she's stuck with all the residual of everything else that people suggested she do with her hair. So kind of silly and kind of funny, but fun. One of the new titles that I think you're going to want to add. Yes, we really have that book with the green cover by that famous guy. It's over there in the book section. I'm guessing that you get questions like that a lot, and there's your answer. You're welcome to use it. The next section, I just noticed as I was looking at new titles, there were several about goats. So our grouping here is You've Got to Be Kidding Me. And the first one is called Scapegoat. You may know Ann Patchett as an author from The Dutch House, an adult read. I was surprised that she also writes picture books. That was new to me. In fact, one came out last year in 2019 called Landslide. So we may want to go backwards and find that. Anyway, in this story, the goat escapes every day and Mr. Farmer has to bring and put him back. And the goat seems to get blamed for everything that goes wrong when he's out. So you get it, scapegoat, kind of a fun play on words. Who trampled the petunias? Where did all the cupcakes go? Who spilled the whole bucket of paint? Of course, everybody blames this goat, but it's not really his fault. And so the story really does have that nice little moral at the end that everyone needs to fess up and tell the truth and not blame that poor goat. The second one is called the Billy Goats Bueno. So if any of you speak Spanish, you would be a much better to present this one than me. It's rich in Spanish vocabulary, and it links to look up the words that it's using. And it really is a tale on the old three billy goat scruff, but a fun spin. So these three little cabritos, I hope I said that right, are going to try and cross the bridge with the grumpiest troll underneath, and that's traditional. But as they're going and giving their silly excuses of why you don't want to eat me, you want to eat my brother, or why you want to let me pass, one of the goats starts to wonder, why is that gigante or the monster so grumpy anyway? He notices then that there's a thorn in the monster's toe. So he sets out to help him and, yes, have his brothers help him, and they become friends. So again, it's a little better ending than the old tale with a little humor, empathy, and kindness thrown in for good luck. The next goat book is, sorry, If You Go With Your Goat to Vote. And it's a fun way to explore what happens on election day. What happens when you go with your grown up to vote? And again, it integrates animals. So if you were a kid, you may chew the ballot. If you're a bunny, you may hop to the polling place. If you are a piglet, you may squeal with delight when you get your sticker. The moral of the story, however, if you go with your grown up to vote, you will probably grow up to vote yourself. So I thought it was timely. You may get it here before next week. I don't know, but it's a fun one to have on the shelf. Seems like we have a lot of takeoffs on old tales this year. Chicken Little, but this one's the real and totally true tale. So it's another spin, as I said, but in this version, Chicken Little's not afraid of anything. She's not afraid of the sky falling. She maybe panics a little bit when she gets bonked on the head, but when she comes to and recovers, she's kind of frustrated. The whole barnyard is all worked up about the sky falling. So she takes it on herself to help these friends of hers calm down and realize what is true and what is real. So it reminds you of the true story of the three little pigs as told by the wolf that was really popular quite a few years ago. Maybe some of you don't remember that one. If you don't, it would be a good one to resurface as well. All right, the final one in this category is the box turtle. The box turtle is kind of a touching story. The little turtle's name is Terrence, and he was born without a shell. But it's not a problem because he can just use a box and it works great. He loves his box because it keeps him dry, it keeps him safe, and it actually is big enough to invite a friend in. And so the illustrations are really kind of pretty and cute when you see how he befriends different people, even though he's different. The other turtles suggest, however, maybe that box is weird. So he goes in search of a better shell and tries a whole bunch of things on. And eventually he realizes it's not that easy to change into something I'm not. And he doesn't mind being different, and that being himself is the very best thing he can be. So the box turtle is kind of a fun one. This one is one of my favorite memes all of all the things I learned in grade school. How to avoid cooties was the last one I expected to ever use. I'm gonna ask Caitlin, the chat isn't fitting on my screen with all the things I've got up that you can't see. Are there any questions or things that we need to discuss or share, or any questions that I can answer? This is probably a good interval.
I don't see any, but if you have questions, please feel free to either unmute yourself and speak up or go ahead and put it in the chat.
Sounds like we still have people entering as well, so that's good. Good news. Okay, so the next section or category is mostly STEM. Again, my expert of STEM is Peggy Whitwer, and she is with our elementary block in northern Utah doing a week-long practicum this week. And so that's why she's not here to help me, and I'm kind of winging it on my own. So when I say mostly STEM, some of them fit here loosely. I didn't actively search them out because of her area of expertise. The first one is a pair of unlikely friends named Jasper and Ollie, and you may know them from their original book. I think it came out last year as well. But this one, they build a fort. And you guessed it, Jasper is quick and feisty like a fox. Ollie is slow and deliberate because he's a sloth. So they make this decision. They're going to build forts in their yard. And you can guess Jasper's goes up quickly. It's beautiful. It's big. It's elaborate. Has a rock climbing wall, bouncy castle. It has a moat. Has all these things. But Ollie's is basically a very common no frills kind of thing, the opposite of what you would expect. But it's exactly what they need. It doesn't fall down, it's sturdy, it's well thought out and planned out. So the contrast that kids will see, sometimes that compromise, the crazy building contrast with Ollie's really planned approach is usually the safe way to go. And they still remain friends. It wasn't a competition. So that's kind of fun. And honestly, everybody loves sports. Grandkids, my grandkids still love to do that. I kind of get a kick out of them when they wait. They act like they're too big or too old for it, but the next thing I know, they're right in the fun with the young kids. So building a fort is kind of a universal theme, and most kids really enjoy it. The next book is a true story, not even based on, it's a true story written with help by Sophia Spencer. So I call it a partial biography. She's 7-year-old Spence. I can't even talk very well. 7-year-old Sophia Spencer, kind of a tongue twister, started at 7 when they were recording a lot of this, but her passion for bugs was when she was 2.5. Now she's 11 or 12. So Thea was visiting, I think it was some type of an arboretum or something like that, and a butterfly landed on her shoulder and it wouldn't leave. It wouldn't leave, so that the custodian had to make it leave before she could leave the building. And she was only 2.5 years old, but she was hooked. And she loved bugs and she was impressed by bugs. At first, her preschool friends were interested and excited about what she was talking about all the time. But by first grade, that's where that 7-year-old piece comes in. Some of her friends were not so kind. They even bullied her. So she kind of stepped back and stopped talking about bugs altogether. Her mother noticed that lack of passion or lack of sharing. So she wrote a letter to an entomological society looking for a pen pal for her daughter so that she wouldn't lose interest in something that she had been so passionate about. Everyone was shocked by the response. There were letters, photos, videos, all arriving daily. And scientists all over the world picked up on the hashtag and weighed in on keep that passion alive. Don't lose your interest in bugs. There's a career for you here. And so it worked. She's been on Good Morning America, The Today Show, NPR, and she continues to share her love of bugs, even though she's just a preteen, a young teenager now. So kind of a fun one if you have kids that are maybe loners or they're not motivated in different ways to share. It's okay. And sometimes it's actually a good thing when we look outside ourselves and help them realize that if one or two kids don't really care about what I like, I can still pursue it. The next one, called How to Solve a Problem, I wasn't sure whether to put it here or not because, again, it's a true story, but solving problems is basically the mantra of engineering, that part of STEM. So in a way, it fits. If not, you can use it however you want. How to Solve a Problem, the Rise and Falls of Rock Climbing Champion Ashima Shirashi. I can't quite say that name, but maybe you can say it better. Again, it's about a true story. She happens to be one of the youngest and most skilled climbers in the whole world. So she tells her own true story of how strength and perseverance helped her in both rock climbing and in her life. The rock climber, the boulder is a problem, and you solve it by climbing to the top. Again, engineers are problem solvers, and so I think it fits in STEM. For Ashima, the moment of triumph is when there's nothing above you but sky. And I love that phrase. I thought that kind of really is poignant in terms of what she has done to make a name for herself as an award-winning rock climber. And I'm really impressed with the details of her failures. She maps them out in terms of that climb in so much detail, the very specific strategies that she designs when she's going to try again. So a really inspirational tale on failure and success, and a true tale of really hard work. I think it does inspire kids to tackle problems on their own and realize that it's okay to fail and try again, which sometimes is emphasized in society and sometimes not so much. All right, the next one is called Pretty Tricky. Um, the Sneaky Way Plants Survive. Well, I have to admit, I was taken by the title, but I never really thought of plants as being tricky. So it's a nonfiction book, however, and it really gives a lot of great factual information how plants adapt, how they defend themselves, how they reproduce, and how they acquire food. It takes in plants around the globe and highlights their unique and significant skills that they have to have almost genetically to survive in their own environments. So I like the fact that there are extra fact bubbles throughout this book so it can enhance the narrative and appeal to different levels of cognition so that kids who want to know more can learn more, or if it's a young reader who just wants the basics, it can stop at that level as well. And my take is that a lot of kids really will get a broader understanding how living things adapt and have to adapt to survive in their environments. So kind of a fun and different title, different take on STEM, if you want to call it that. Smelly Kelly kind of fits here as well. It's also almost a biography. It is a true story about a guy named Kelly and his super senses. He basically used his senses and his intelligence to make the world a better place. And this took place in the 1930s. So a lot of stuff the kids would have to look up. They wouldn't really understand the beginnings of the subway system in New York. So it turns out he could smell everything, rats in the shed, circus elephants a mile away, and even tomorrow's rain. And people thought he was kind of weird. And he thought, I got to make a living with my uniqueness. And so he took that extraordinary sense of his and got a job working for the New York City subway. And that powerful nose and hearing was pretty intense too, allowed him to identify where there might be dangerous leaks of gas or water just by using his senses. And then he did one better and he invented tools to help track down those leaks and make that environment safer for people that were working there. Well, the city in general, I think. He also prevented cave-ins, he prevented explosions, and kept the tunnels underneath the city safe, in essence, saving a lot of lives. And of course, the beautiful illustrations make this particular one indescribable. Yeah, I really liked it. I couldn't resist this one because you're all library people. Good night, Moon. Good night, Zoom. Good night, sense of impending doom. I don't think that's the intent, but it's kind of a fun way to keep our tongue in cheek while we're dealing with quarantine and all of those things. This particular section I just called bits and pieces because none of them had a lot of similarity, but there are a few differences. You may be familiar with investigators. If you look at the cover, it kind of tells it all. This is the original book, and then the follow-up is The Investigators Take the Plunge. And also there's a new book coming out next spring. Kind of goofy graphic novels, if you want to call them that. I kind of feel like, for me, most graphic novels are a little bit on the goofy side, but definitely hold appeal to some readers. So they really are helpful to have those in your collection. So this series is about a super spy alligator, get it? They're alligators, named Mango and Brash. They travel through the sewers at night and fight evil. Who knew there was evil forces down there? They have spy technology and they travel through toilets to remain undercover. So the second one where they take the plunge, they have a new mystery to solve and they end up having their own headquarters under attack. And so everything's a big mess. They go underground and undercover to unclog the situation. And you guessed it, they're disguised as sewer workers, which is kind of silly. They're looking for the criminal named Cracker Dial. You can see that the authors had a lot of fun helping these two characters solve crimes. Both books are filled with a lot of fun puns. So I would say recommend these to the punniest kids you know. I have one grandson who loves puns. He's in high school. It's his favorite thing, and we exchange memes almost on a daily basis. The third installment will be out in February. So if you have kids that like graphic novels, those are some fun recommendations. I wish I could see all your faces to see your recognition on some of these, because I feel like I'm preaching to the choir if you've already got all these, but please stop me or say you're bored or whatever. Flubby is not a good pet. I hope you're familiar with Flubby the cat. This book particularly was Theodore Gassel honor book. So you can see that it's very well done, and he, the cat himself, has a lot of character. He's a big sleepy cat. He just doesn't do the things other pets do. He won't sing, he won't play catch, he won't even jump. But when there's a scary situation that he faces with his owner, they realize they need each other, they have to work together. So I guess Flubby's a good pet after all. It's an easy to read, it's a good transitional book for maybe beginning readers that want to become fluent. That's a good transition book to recommend. The last one in this section is called Jack at Bat. And you're probably also familiar with Jack. I kind of, like I said, wish I could see your faces and see how much recognition is there. If you don't have this particular one in the series, he actually is this irreverent bunny rabbit that you probably know and love. This is book number 3 of 8. So that's where it fits in the series. His team now is playing an important ball game, and he's not allowed to even swing the bat. So they designate him to be the bat boy until the score is tied and they really need him. So he gets up to hit a home run, and he does so. But on the way to home base, he spots some snacks. And let's just say he got distracted, bless his heart, that silly Jack at bat. I really love the emotion on these pages. It's kind of funny. You mean we can't access a library's print collection? No, only the electronic resources. Just the consolation that you see there is just kind of tender, but tongue-in-cheek as well. This section's on caring and kindness, again, a point topic for this time in our society. If you're familiar with Tomorrow I'll Be Brave, this is a follow-up book, Tomorrow I'll Be Kind by Jessica, I think it's Hish. Anyway, it encourages the promise of tomorrow that kids will commit to being grateful, helpful, and kind. And the mantra or the little verse really kind of stuck with me. Tomorrow I'll be everything I strive to be each day. And even when it's difficult, I'll work to find a way. So it basically acknowledges that not everything's going to work out just like we want, but being kind needs to underscore everything that we do. It serves as a reminder to everyone that the smallest kind gesture can make the difference, biggest difference in the world. This is where I would like to encourage you to put kind gestures that came your way, and some of them are really kind of silly, in the chat. If you would jot down something that someone did for you or you witnessed someone do. An example would be many years ago, I was teaching the child development course and had shown the childbirth film, traumas involved. And one of the girls in my class passed out, and we were all kind of getting around her. I dismissed class and we're trying to help her. I had another student. He was Asian, so his language is limited, but he was so concerned about helping her. He searched through his backpack and found a candy bar and handed it to her. Not necessarily what she really needed, but definitely a kind gesture, trying to help someone in any way he could. So if you would start adding kind gestures to the chat, I think that would be a way we can interact just a little bit with each other. And Caitlin, if there's some particular ones we need to share, please interrupt me. All right. Just remember, little gestures sometimes have the biggest impact. And this is a great story to elaborate on that. I was really excited about this next book, The Seed of Compassion, because for the first time ever, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, addresses children. He shares messages from his own childhood. It's beautifully written and it's heartfelt. So it's very sincere. What kids don't know, and probably we don't really think about, is he was once an ordinary child. He was born in a small village in Tibet, but I love the fact that he attributes the best model and teacher of compassion to him was his mother. And so in the book, he integrates everyday activities that most kids do into universal life lessons about compassion. And I think, again, it's poignant, it's timely, a really good addition to the connection. And who's more universal than the Dalai Lama in a topic like this? In our confusing and crazy world right now, this book to me is really representative of what we need to focus on and maybe get back to kindness and compassion. All right. The next one is written by Kristen Bell, the actress, with Benjamin Hart. The World Needs More Purple People is kind of a funny title, and I'm still not sure exactly why or how they came up with it, but it basically challenges everyone to become a purple person by practicing and embracing what makes you special. Along with what makes you special, how do you find common ground to appreciate those around you? So, what is a purple person? It's basically an everyday superhero that has the attributes of someone that is there to help others and do the right thing for the right reasons. So, a little girl in this book named Penny Purple will lead you through the process of becoming an everyday superhero, a fun addition to your collections. The next one, this is kind of funny. I don't know how these kind of thematically show up on their own sometimes, but everyone gets a say is about a snail, and so is the next one. So you can see these cute, fun illustrations of snails that are the main character of these two books. Pudding is a snail who can't seem to get his friends to agree on anything. And it seems like whatever Jitterbug the chipmunk wants, Geezer the goose doesn't. Whatever Toast the butterfly wants, Duffles and Nudge the otters are absolutely against. They need a leader. Who should it be? Should it be the fastest, the fluffiest, the squishiest? Can Pudding show his friends that there just might be a way for everyone to get a say in who's going to be their leader? So it really does have that theme of working together to achieve success. And again, clever illustrations, beautifully done. Snail Crossing, another one of my favorites this go around. It's kind of a twist on the Aesop's fable of the tortoise and the hare with the mantra of slow and steady wins the race, kind of. The snail spies a yummy cabbage across the road and nothing's going to stop him. But he's at a snail's pace, remember. It won't be a speeding car. It won't be a hovering crow. He's going to get to that cabbage. But he has to stop in the middle of the road because the rain starts coming down in torrents and he needs to help a bunch of ants that are trying to get out of the rain. So obviously they just climb in his shell. Again, beautiful illustrations of how it's all dark in there and he asks them if they want tea. It's kind of like he just invited them into his home. Anyway, they go on their merry way and he gets headed back to find that cabbage, but he gets spun around and in circles and he actually is headed back in the wrong direction. So he's confused and it looks like he's never going to get to the cabbage, but you can guess what happens. The new friends, the ant, come up with a clever idea and they basically lift the cabbage and bring it to him. So determination and kindness both bring him the best reward of friendship rather than what he thought his goal would be. So a fun one to add. The last one in this category is not a picture book. I don't know if you can tell. It's more of a chapter book, but I felt it need to be included in this category. More appropriate for preteens and early teens. Starts out like this. Mom and Dad told me about the divorce in a family meeting. I sat on the couch between them. They didn't look happy, and I suddenly got word that something was wrong with our cat named Red. They were going to tell me that he was dying, but it wasn't that. That wasn't it at all. When Bee's parents got divorced, a lot of things changed, but some things didn't. Then her dad announced that he and his boyfriend Jess are getting married. At least Bee is excited to finally get a sister. So you can see the content in this chapter book, very timely, very difficult, but it really truly could be things that children in our world today are dealing with on a daily basis. So I kind of like that title, the list of things that will not change. That idea of having something that's constant in their lives when so many other things are changing. All right, let's take a minute and look at the chat. Never underestimate the power of a girl with a book. You recognize who we have here? Yep. Example to all women. Let's see. When I was in a car accident and realized I didn't have rental car coverage as part of my insurance, a colleague of mine came to my house and picked me up to carpool until my car could be repaired. That's wonderful. Caitlin, thanks for sharing that. Does anybody else want to share? Not necessarily, huh? Okay, we'll continue on. We're going to run out of time anyway, it looks like. So maybe that won't happen. Old Lives Matter, not that funny of a title if you're my age, but it spoke to the group of books that I have here together. The first one's called Grandpa's Top Threes. It's an intergenerational story of both love and resilience. And it reminded me of my very favorite book of all time, picture book, well, at least by Tommy DePaula, titled Now One Foot, Now the Other. My master's project was actually based on intergenerational education. I've always felt like there's an affinity between young children and the elderly, and I really did an experimental project. And I started my presentation with that book. If you don't have that one in your collection, by the late break, I'm sad to lose Tommy this year, but what a resource. So many contributions, but that one really spoke to my heart. Anyway, this book is about a little guy named Henry. He loves his grandma. His grandpa, I'm sorry, and he likes to talk to him, but grandpa has basically stopped listening. His mom says, just give him time. He's grieving the loss of grandma. But Henry wants him to talk now. So he comes up with a little game that he calls the top threes. And he'll say, top three, whatever. And he'll list one, grandpa list one, and he'll list one. And somehow that works to bring grandpa back to him in terms of talking. A very emotional story about love and loss and the awesomeness of a relationship of grandkids with their grandparents. Similar to that, a stopwatch from grandpa. In the beginning, the small child says, when summer started, I got grandpa's stopwatch. I didn't want his stopwatch. I want him. His grandpa used to time everything. A race to the end of the street, 24 seconds. Eating bubblegum ice cream, 1 minute and 58 seconds. He says, there's no more grandpa minutes, grandpa seconds. Time just stops. The story then integrates the stages of grief in a really nice way that prompts or opens the venue for discussion about emotion and loss, which is sometimes hard to approach with young children. Again, one of my favorites because of the intergenerational relationships with the young children. If you're a fan of the How to Grandma and Grandpa books by Jean Regan, this is the newest installment. It basically teaches how to read to a grandma and grandpa. Kids can show their grandparents how to choose a book, find the perfect spot to read, use their best loud voices, everything basically they've learned from their grandparents. So it really does continue with that role reversal that's kind of humorous at times. I love that they include a lot of activities that grandparents and grandkids can do together. Again, some tender moments that happen with these relationships. The most powerful, probably, sorry about that, in this grouping is the oldest student. And it's basically a true story of how Mary Walker learned to read. Imagine trying to learn to read at age 116. So she really did just that. In 1848, she was born into slavery. At 15, she was freed. When she was 20, she was married and had her first child. By age 68, she had worked a lot of different jobs. At 114, she was the last member of her family. And at 116, she learned to read. Imagine the perseverance and the modeling for kids that you're never too old to learn. And this is kind of funny, but not so funny if you feel old, being in the classroom. And it kind of is poignant after what we need to know about kids returning to school after Corona. All right, the very last section I called "Tis the Season" plus underwear, because every year we try to include at least one underwear book. I didn't have any that I totally loved this year, but I did find one. This first book is not rated, it's not highly recommended on Amazon or any of the lists. I just happen to follow a former student on Facebook, and her mother has taken up this author illustrator mode. And you can tell just by that cover how beautiful the illustrations are. And I always think it's fun to add something new to your holiday collection. And so this is would possibly fill that bill for you. It's time to cheer and time to shout. It's time the witch's fun night out. So a nonsensical, fun Halloween book. Again, not rated, but I think it's worthy. This one is really fun, that monster on the block, because this monster is really excited to see who's going to move into the house where Vampire used to live. So he practices his growl for the new neighbor. And he's kind of surprised when the truck pulls up and it's not a goblin, it's not an ogre, it's not a dragon. In fact, it's more terrifying than you can imagine. It's a clown. Yep, the monster's afraid of clowns. So he quickly tries to get all the neighbors to turn against this clown because he's not necessarily excited to have something scary like that on his block. But the clown just keeps going on, making people happy and helping them. And the monster realizes that the clown isn't so bad. He faces his fear and he accepts people that are different than him. The last one is Dr. Grundy's Undies. You can find it on YouTube. I was going to play it, but we are running out of time. If you're familiar with I Need a New Butt and I Broke My Butt, this is Don Millen, the author. It's basically a world tour in a way. The undies that are really unique because they're decorated with tiger stripes and tiger eyes blow off the clothesline and they go to far lands and do all these crazy things. You guessed it, the wind blows them back. And so he gets to start that whole adventure again. I wanted to end with this meme just because if you've seen it on Facebook, you get it. If not, you might want to take a minute and read what some clever librarian or some owner of all these books did to put it in perspective in terms of what we're dealing with in terms of COVID. My contact information is on your handout. It's also the beginning and end of this. I think we can have time for one or two questions. I'm not expecting a lot this because you guys have been super quiet. But it says there's still 14 of you here. All right, Caitlin, I guess we're finished. Just in a couple of minutes, they need to be to another one, right?
Ria, thank you so much.
All
Really
right.
appreciate it.
I will stop the recording and let you guys move on. Thank you, everyone.